5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, spiritual dope. I am on today with David Sandercott. And a big thanks goes out today. We were just talking. He and I were on together probably what was about a month ago, David, and something in the ether chewed up. It's like my dog ate my homework type of thing happened, and so Dave's back here again for a second round. I really appreciate you coming back. So Dave is the author of a 21-day meditation journey, connect with spirit every day in a new way, a life and business coach and speaker. David is also excited to announce that he is now working with small businesses and large corporations. In 1998, David decided to be the shortest high fashion model ever. He also decided that he was going to meditate himself there. In 2001, David was the shortest male model ever to appear in Vogue magazine in a 6-page spread shot by Helmut Newton alongside supermodel Kate Dillon. Ever since, David has been inspired to help others to achieve their dreams. David, thanks for being on today. How are you?
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here, Brandon. You got the longer, older bio there from the
Is
website.
that
I
is that
love
right?
it.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I thought that was actually pretty a short one. I was happy. I was like, wow, you don't have your whole life story there. Thank you.
Yeah, good. I like short bios.
It was good. It was a good one. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So, well, we start these off with the idea. Let's see if you can remember everything that we did last time because it was perfect. We start these off with the whole idea that source speaks through us for like just kind of this moment and purpose. And right now, source is speaking through you to an audience member, and only the way that it can through you. What is that message to that audience member today?
Wow, that's a great question, Brandon. I almost want to close my eyes and connect a little bit just to make sure I get it right. I think that message is, above anything is to believe in yourself, to love yourself, and to know that if you have the inspiration in your heart, if you have that reoccurring thought of this thing that you want to do or that pull to do something, that you have everything you need within you to do that thing. And if you're using the excuse of, I don't have the money, I promise you that's not what's stopping you from doing it. You're most people think of capital as money. Facebook, Steve Jobs, Apple, they didn't have millions and millions of dollars to start. They started with the capital in their mind, which was an idea. And it's just like them, your idea is your true capital. Does that make sense? Does that sound like something they want to hear?
I love it. I love it, man. Absolutely, absolutely. I think being pulled to do it, and I think that that's something. How can somebody recognize that they're being pulled to do it, and it's not just ego telling them that that's the thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's part of the art of life, of, how to be human is learning how to be a happy human, is learning to decipher between that voice that speaks to you. Like, let's say Bugs Bunny, right? Bugs Bunny used to have the angel pop up and like the devil on one side. And so you have to learn to differentiate between those. And what I can most to tell you is that fear is the devil, and when it feels good and your heart opens, that's God, that's the angel. You know, I don't think I can give you some sort of linear way to tell you how to decipher those voices. You have to do it through practice, through learning to love yourself and trust yourself, and through meditation and contemplation. But usually, it feels good and doesn't involve fear. And then, what was the second part of the question?
Well, now I don't remember. I was so
Well,
hung
that's
up
all
on
right.
like
It
it's
was a
not
great
linear.
question, but how do you decipher? And then the one thing you said, that you're being led. How do you
Right.
know that you're being led? And it's simple. So I'll just two things. Like, one exercise I did is I wrote down 10 goals every day for a year. And it was like what goals of those were left at the end of the year, those were the ones that were really important. They kept the ones that kept coming up over and over and over again. And again, it's like that in your heart and in your mind. What keeps coming up? What do you keep thinking about wanting to do? What inspires you when you think about doing it? And that's the pull that I'm speaking of. And to some degree, it's also easy.
Mm.
It's not that there's not challenges or obstacles, but it's easy. It's easy when it's right. It's easy.
So being in Vogue was right and easy for you. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, someone interviewed me for that recently, or we were talking about manifestation, the art of manifestation. She's like, and I bet you that you had some struggles or some challenges, leading up to getting in Vogue. I was like, no, it was so easy and effortless. It was part of it. I think that I was so young that I hadn't had much adversity in my life, maybe, and I just decided to do something, and I decided to meditate, and I decided to visualize, and I decided to read affirmations, and I decided I was going to do this thing. And it, honest to God, was the most easy and effortless thing I've ever done in my life. I think because it was right, it was divine, it was to show me that you really can do anything you put your mind to if you believe in yourself and stick with it.
You've got a lot of a lot of good stuff in there, right? I think that everybody feels like it's supposed to be a challenge, right? If it's worth it, it's going to take work. If it's worth it, you're gonna have to put in the work, and it's gonna be hard, and you're gonna have to put in like you're gonna have to grind it out, and all
Yeah,
this other stuff. Um, but when you do it in that manner, then it's kind of like what you put out there is what you get back. That's exactly what it's going to take. It's going to take a grind, and it's going to be hard, and all this other stuff. But it sounds to me like what you did was you said, well, here's another piece of this too that I think we don't hear a bunch of in like the law of attraction world. If you don't know how to do it and you just start doing it, then the path just kind of opens up for you. Is that kind of how it went for you?
absolutely, because that's what I want to say. Action is the key to success. Now, there is all kinds of action involved, right? There
Sure.
absolutely was, and yes, that is how it started. All I knew I needed to have pretty pictures of myself. I knew I needed that, so that was the first step. I knew I needed to be in great shape, but that's what I loved doing anyway. So there was a lot of work in the gym, but you know what? There's nothing I would rather do in my life than that. And then, yeah, there was action. You just had to talk to agents. I mentioned I went to New York, and this guy just, oh, look at you, you're so little and cute. Ha ha, you want to be a model, you know? And even that didn't phase me. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to be a model. Yeah,
That's great.
Eh,
So when you're saying that too, when you said action, right? And I forget what I was watching. There was like another law of attraction spin-off, or the secret spin-off
mhm.
for a bunch of people that were in there. And one guy's like, by the way, the word action is at the end of attraction, right? Like the word action
Perfect.
is in attraction. And I thought that was pretty cool. But what you're also talking about too, and I'm hearing you say, is like you kind of had clarity and purpose and an intention, and you got behind it, you believed in yourself, and you just aligned to it, right? You did. And thank you for the recommendation, right? The Dorothea brand, acted as if it was impossible to fail.
That's right. That's right. It was yeah. It's such a great book. And so, anyways, I mentioned Think and Grow Rich before. I read the book Think and Grow Rich. It told me I could do anything I wanted to do if I believed in myself, made a decision to do it, and I meditated. So those were the three things I did. Exactly what you said. I made a decision, and I think that is where so many people falter. That's where so many people that the decision they make is not to make a decision, or decision they make is to make an excuse on why they can't make the decision. When it was, I made a clear cut decision. I was going to be the world's shortest high fashion model. And now, I, honest to God, could probably get into the Guinness Book of World Records with everything that I had for doing that. That didn't necessarily mean to me though get in the world Guinness Book of World Records. That's not. It was just get something that only a 6'2", blue steel type model could do. And that was it. That fulfilled it. But I made the decision to do it, so I had to succeed. And then I believed in myself, and I followed it up with action. So there's the non-action action of the daily meditation and the daily visualization was equally and probably more important than the other daily actions of going to castings, meeting people, always be doing something, right? And and not doing something for the sake of doing something, like modeling jobs, photo shoots, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, sure. I think there's a lot of sounds to me what you're talking about is there's a lot of people that do these actions and this busy stuff, but there's nothing behind it, right? There's no intent, there's no alignment. There's like, all right, well, I'm supposed to do these things, this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing. But if it's not aligned to an intention, a purpose, a direction, or like this grand vision, I mean, we can call what you had a vision of what you thought was possible for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I think another thing too is that people are afraid to have a vision. People are afraid to be a visionary because they think it needs to be something greater than it is, right? You can have many visions. You can right. You can have these visions that these practice visions we'll call them, right? But I think what you're talking about too is the idea of making a decision. Did you pull that out of Think and Grow Rich? And a sub question: are you a Bob Proctor fan?
I did pull it out of Think and Grow Rich. Those were the three biggest takeaways: make a decision, believe in yourself, and meditate. That was the key. And all my life, that decision making has been key. Was a huge, like, Proctor was really inspiring to me like 15 years ago. I
He's still
don't
my jam.
really,
I
I
love that
mean,
old
because he
man.
walks around Think and Grow Rich, and so he's,
Right.
but I haven't really been cued into him for a long time.
No, fair enough. And the reason I bring that up because he brings up the word decision, and the root of the word is like
To
decide
seed
or
array, to
something.
cut off
Right,
from. That's
right,
right
right.
from
So
Think and Grow Rich. So
is it is I okay?
once you
Yeah,
make the decision, there's no other option. You
that's right.
have to, you cut
Yeah.
yourself off from all other options.
Well, look, I'm super impressed that you got that out of Think and Grow Rich, like even immediately because it's a tough read, and if you're trying to read that on your own, without some kind of I don't know, I want to say guidance because it's a tough one to read. Like I certainly, and for me, I never pulled meditate out of there. Where did you pull that out? I'm like, where'd you pull the rabbit out of the hat, bro?
You know, it's I read it sometimes, and I'm like, and it is in there. And I am convinced that the older of the edition of the book you can get, the better.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken stuff out over the years. There's this
Huh.
beautiful poem in there that's not in the original unabridged version anymore. I don't
Hmm.
know why. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm making it up, but it was just as loud and clear to me in that book was, you got to meditate if you want to be successful. That's just what I
Interesting.
saw. And I remember asking Mr. Van Ash, who was sort of like a mentor of mine, and I said, do you
Hmm.
meditate? And he's like, well, no, but I drive home silently for like an
Hmm.
hour. I do this drive, and that's sort of like my meditation. So he knew what I was talking about because we were talking about the
Right.
book.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I don't know, but I got it out of there, and it is in there. He does say the word meditate.
No, no doubt. I believe you, man. I believe you 100%. And then you threw out a couple of words earlier there when we were talking about easy and effortless, right? The idea of more meditation, but you talked about like kind of divine intervention, right? Like when do you feel like you really flipped the spirituality switch for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I just want to say the effortless way. That's what I'm teaching June 19th is the effortless way. June 19th, I'm having a Prosper event. But anyways, so again, the spiritual switch turned on for me when I was, well, honestly, when I was in my teenage or even preteen years. I remember thinking about wanting to find my higher self, like that being my driving force. I knew there was something more. And then when I read Think and Grow Rich at that time, that was it, man. Less than a year after that, I moved to LA. I was meditating an hour a day. I was visualizing, but it was just as soon as I got sober from like a 4 year, run of being drunk, at 22, I was immediately called to spirit. And that doesn't mean I didn't like break up with it during certain times or like neglect it and forget about it. And to some degree, if I had a regret, that would be the regret I had in my life. When all of my good friends started moving out to LA, I sort of shifted back kind of into the role that I played more with them instead of just sticking to the celibate, spiritual, and just I was a machine. I mean, I was, I yeah. It happened very early on, and then again in 2011.
So I think that it's interesting that you kind of found it and you were called toward it at such a young age. And I don't think that I think that somewhere around 20 we get called to that, right? And it's
Yeah, I
kind of
was
like this,
22. Yeah.
a window of an opportunity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we either heed it then or we don't, right? For those of us that don't, myself included, you kind of go about life in this default mode, right? And you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna go do all these other things everybody else is doing because that's what looks like I should be doing. And then to me, again, and this is just based off of personal experience, but the other window of opportunity kind of opens up around, when you get close to 40, right? There's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
still here if you want to hang out, bro, right? Like, I mean, and spirituality is like that. It's like, all right, listen, hope you had a good time. It's time to get serious again, right? Remember me? You're like, what? Where have you been, man? It's been crazy. So I think it's really cool that you kind of took hold of it, and you talk about the breakups, and the other piece that you're talking about is when your friends show up. It's interesting, right? When you go home, you're like, well, oh, this is who I was when I left, and so people are still expecting me to be that way, and that's probably what it was when your friends come out to visit you. Like, you're like, oh, this is the Dave they know, right? Let me remind, and you revert back to something that's acceptable for the people that you know. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, I
Would you
would
say?
say it was unconscious, to
Mm-hmm.
to a large degree. But looking back now, yeah, I would say I, what I really want to express is the way not to fall in that trap is to really have a great deal of love and respect for yourself, and recognize how what you're doing is working. Now, it was a lot of fun to fall back into that role because my friends were all kind of like rich or had more money than me, and they had a beach house in Hermosa. And I mean, we had I never drank, but I still had a lot of fun with them. But they were all getting master's degrees and establishing careers. And I fell back into the guy who was just along for the ride, not realizing that they're eventually going to get kids and not be able to take care of me, get married, have kids. And,
What do you mean? I
I'm
got to
not going
get
to be
off
able
this
to,
couch.
yeah, yeah.
I get it. I get it. What's interesting though too is that it doesn't sound like you succumb to their way of living though either by feeling like, and maybe you did, and let me
No, I
know.
didn't. I mean, I gave them stuff for it. A lot. Not really, but I mean, I'm definitely the guy that people talk to if they don't want to drink so much.
Well, I mean, not even just the drinking, but like the the workforce, right? Going back into the workforce, getting the education, and doing kind of doing what's the socially expected norm. Um, that's what your friends did, right? They finished school, got degrees, got married, had kids, and fell in line.
They absolutely did, and it worked for them to the degree they're happy. I'll say this: this is coming up for me. It's like sometimes I give teachers or education a bad rap, but I had a fifth grade teacher named Miss Apicarian. She was great. The rumor was that during lunch she smoked doobies in her like 1970s Datsun in the Datsun in the corner of the parking lot. But anyways, at the beginning of class every single day, we recited The Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost. And I have no doubt that that completely impacted me in such a profound way because everything I've ever done in my life was the road less traveled, was taking the road less traveled.
That's awesome. I'm in agreement with you there, right? Like I definitely, I'm probably not as kind as I could be to the education system, but there are certainly teachers that had a profound impact of the ones that you remember that touched your
Absolutely.
lives, right? And
Mr.
and you could
Benz,
tell
he just retired, and I made him a video, someone, and I just let him know that you inspired me to start
that's
reading,
so
and
great.
reading changed my life.
Mm.
Not the
What do you
stuff they
think
gave
the
you in school, but the
what do you
other
think
stuff.
what do you think the impact of doing something like that is? Reaching out to a past teacher, did he reply to you? What are your thoughts there?
Well, it was sent in like a group thing, like someone put it together, and I don't know, but I know he saw it. And so I had a rubber band ball that was like this big, and he took it away from me. And I had went back like 5 or 6 years later, and he still had it. And then I asked someone to ask. So at his retirement, he still had the rubber band ball that I gave him. So I know he remembered me. And so I'm
That's
sure that
awesome.
he was grateful for that message.
That's great.
you know, I was happy to do
Right.
it because teachers get, they get pooped on a lot too.
Yeah.
From
It's. I mean, and it's a shame. Some are there, and but to the idea that some are there for a job and some are there to really impact lives. And it sounds like you had a few that were there to really impact your life.
Yeah, that's right.
and and I think I'm going to segue that into kind of what you're doing, right? You're right now you're teaching some of these practices and principles that you've been able to find success with in your life. One of those is I think that you initially kind of did a lot of work in the space by helping others to get their first 1 grand, 5 grand, and now you're working to help them get their first 10 grand in their own respective spaces. Let's talk a little bit about that and what you're about in that space.
Yeah. So after I read Think and Grow Rich for that first time, it was like I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know there was a thing called a coach back then, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do and mentor people. And I did it as a wrestling coach. And I had athletes come back to me a decade later say, that thing that you said, or I read Think and Grow Rich and it really made a big difference in my life. So I got to start doing it back then, and then I was a fitness trainer because that's something that I was really passionate about sharing. And then around mid 2000s, 2007, 2008, I got into direct sales, which was like building a sales team, and then network marketing. Like you buy something essentially, and then you teach other people, then you get someone else to buy it and teach them to sell it. Is essentially how that goes. And that was really where coaching started. And two big things happened there. I helped several people earn their first $1,000 as an entrepreneur, which was extremely rewarding, and maybe even more impactful was I went to New Zealand essentially for a long weekend to bungee jump because it was on my list of things to do and to see a speaker. And I was gone for 5 or 6 days, and I came back with $5,000 more in my bank account than when I left because a sale went through. Because there was leverage in this business in the system I was in, and so it was like I was on vacation and I made $5,000, and it was just like that's it. I'm hooked for the rest of my life, no matter what. If I have to work, it's just something to pay the bills until I figure this all out. I was an entrepreneur for life after that. And so that's where I started. And then again, it took that business. Eventually, one of the partners joined Scientology, and unfortunately, that whole business went away. And I found myself depressed. I broke my foot in 5 places. I gained 40 pounds. I didn't have the business identity. I didn't have the bodybuilder identity. I was lost. I literally just wanted to end my life, fetal position for weeks.
Yeah, let's pause on that for a second. Let's pause on the idea that getting caught up in our identity being what it is that we do.
Yeah. Well, that's a big mistake. I encourage nobody. I always say at the beginning of my meditation classes, you are not your job. You are not your social
Mm,
economic standings. You are not what you
right.
do for a living.
So I mean, I guess so. You're sitting on the couch, you're in a fetal position, and you've lost your kind of sense of identity. Is what it sounds like. How did you recover from that?
Yeah. Well, so I did two things. I got on my knees, I surrendered my life to God, I asked for guidance, and I listened. And that was by all means the number one thing. And that's what guided me, right? That's what pulled me. The second thing is equal importance that I stopped being a victim. I stopped blaming the outside world. That was part about it, is that I had so many opportunities in my life to be in such a better position than I was. And instead of taking responsibility for it, I was blaming it and blaming society and blaming other people. I was like, if you notice, one of the biggest trophies in the world right now is who's the biggest victim. And I assure you that that is not the game you want to play for happiness and success. It was taking responsibility for my all of my mess ups and life situation, current circumstances.
Yeah, I mean that's huge, right? When you can kind of recognize, and I'm just kind of taking a leap here, but you can kind of recognize that all of your success or failure is coming from within, and it has nothing to do with what's outside of you. And when you do that, there's so much ownership, right? There's so much empowerment that comes from that, because now you can be like, oh yeah, that was me. It was me over here too, and these failures were me. but so are these successes, right? So both sides of the coin. That's fantastic. So we don't have a whole lot of time here, unfortunately. But you've got a course coming up, right? What is the course called? What are you going to be teaching? What's it called?
Yeah, June 19th. It's just Prosper virtual event. I'll be teaching prosperity consciousness, helping spiritual entrepreneurs, coaches, healer to create the mindset, the prosperity consciousness to have their first $10,000 month, their first 10K month.
Nice, nice. And we'll share the link to that. But the link is what again?
I'd have to give it to you. I actually bought a URL just for it, but it's like David Sandercott /
I think
Prosper
it's just
virtual
David Scott.
event.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, that's right. You
yeah,
can. If you go to davidsandercott.com, that's right. It's right there.
yeah. Pops right up. Pops right up. Great.
davidsandercott.com.
So I'll be sure to share that out, right? And then this I told you before. This is kind of like a spiritual speed dating court, like right? And the deal is like there's 30 minutes, right? That's all we've got. Somebody's gonna come on and they're gonna decide whether or not they spiritually want to date David J. Sandercott, right? So it's not a lot of time, and so one of the questions I'll ask you is this one of our speed dating questions will be what does it mean to live in the present moment, bachelor number one?
Yeah, what does it mean to live in the present moment? Well, it means that if you're living in the present moment, you're going to be happy, fulfilled, and at peace. You're going to be okay with the way everything is, no matter what. You're going to be living your life consciously. And that's what we're here to do, is to evolve our consciousness. And the best way to evolve your consciousness is to be more conscious. And if you're living in the moment, you're being conscious.
Elaborate on what you mean by conscious.
Well, being conscious of your consciousness. There's that which can observe yourself think, and there's the brain that can think. There's a subject and an object. So keep your attention on that part of yourself that can observe yourself thinking, and really go one step more and observe the observer observing. It's all a play of consciousness. There's all a field of consciousness, and we are that consciousness. So it's coming to know yourself. It's being conscious of the consciousness and of as yourself as the consciousness.
Dave took us to another level, guys. Took us to another level. There's a great feeling when you become the observer that you're talking
Absolutely.
about.
I always go like
And
this. You say I want to go like this. This is where you want to live life, from like 3 feet back,
right,
above
right.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much again, David, for popping on. Always enjoy the conversation, both of them. And we'll be sure to share this out. Is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to share out with the audience today?
One quick thing. The last question you asked me, I remember the first time we did it, got me a little bit. And it was like, what do you wish for the world? And it was like,
Oh.
I didn't like my answer. So I thought about it a little bit. And what I would wish for the world is the exact same thing that I wish for me, happiness, peace,
Sure.
prosperity, and abundance in all areas of your
Mm,
life.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's funny. You remember the question, and I think that this is the part where some people get a little confused in the love thy neighbor as thyself kind of thing, right? And this is kind of, I mean, I look at it in the very same way, so what you wish upon your neighbor is really what you're wishing upon yourself. And just in the same token, you just said, hey, what I wish on the world is what I would wish upon myself. And when you do that, we look at the universe as kind of this force multiplier. What we put out comes back to us. I mean, right?
That's
So
it.
great answer. Thanks for sharing that. And I definitely appreciate you being on.
Yeah, loved it. Thanks for having me, Brandon.